Good evening. Stephanie Brown here from Intelligent Construction Opportunities and the Tech Before the Tech, our live stream that is intended to help bring together both the software side with the construction professionals. Tonight, I am happy to welcome Scott Brandt from eQuorum. Scott, I believe you're out of Georgia. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Scott has a specific specialty as a background in engineering himself, with running a software company that specifically works with very large enterprises to help them manage their documents. So tonight we hope to uncover certain ideas and things around the whole idea of document control and who gets the best use out of it. But we'd like to have as much engagement as we can from our listeners. We open up the floor at all times for any questions or opinions that may arise out of our conversation. So please feel free to come on board and ask any questions, and we'll do our best in the chat to acknowledge and answer. But if anybody wants to jump on and let us know where they're coming from tonight, we'd be happy to hear from you. So, Scott, with that, I want to just sort of give a little bit of introduction to you. I met Scott as I was looking for one of my clients. I evaluate software at Intelligent Construction Opportunities. And so what I do is then I connect with people like Scott at eQuorum and start to uncover and unpack the kinds of qualities that they have in their particular system for this instance of this client. And so we got to know each other, and I sat through some of his demos. They've got terrific customer service and really great enterprise clients. So with that, Scott, take it away, and you want to introduce yourself to our audience? Would love that.
Yeah, sure. I'm Scott Brandt. I run eQuorum. That's with an EQ, eQuorum, and we've been in the business of providing engineering solutions for over 26 years. We started out as a part of a company called Buyers Engineering, which is an engineering services company, creating, believe it or not, software for plotting and printing of wide format drawings. So for those of you out there who are old enough to remember blueprints and wide format printing, when we actually printed stuff, we created software that helped batch print for large plotters. We were CADnet back then. People will still remember CADnet. We changed our name in the late 1990s to eQuorum, and started leveraging a engineering document management solution that we had. So we've been improving, enhancing, and selling that solution now for over 20 years. And we are proud that we were one of the first HTML solutions out there back in the early 2000s. And more recently, we were one of the first SaaS solutions in the industry back in 2014. So,
what got you into it, Scott? What can you sort of tell a little bit of story about your trajectory into it all?
Yeah, well, I'm what they call a serial entrepreneur. So this is actually my fifth gig. So I just came on board about 7 years ago for this in this country in this company, and but I'm an engineer by trade. I've got an engineering degree from Duke University, and I also have a computer science master's. So that's where I am. I've done software all my life, and I love doing engineering. And they just came together for this company was looking for some leadership.
And what have you found in the last, I'll say, 5 years that perhaps surprised you when you first started down the road, since you've got a master's in computer science, and obviously things have evolved to the point where most of us live half our lives, if not more, between these screens and ourselves. So what would you say have been the high points and the low points of it all that um, maybe didn't pan out the way you thought it was gonna?
Well, we've done some great things. I love working for smaller companies. This is a smaller company. Uh, I came from the prior company I had was in healthcare, so uh, I was looking forward to helping out organizations that actually made stuff and could make decisions, and that's been fun. And dealing with engineers who I like dealing with personally because typically there's not a lot of chit chat, not a lot of BS going on. So that's what I love, and um, we've been great. It took us a while to get the SaaS solution up and on premise. I've been surprised about, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised about the lack of take up on cloud SaaS solutions by many organizations. I would figure where we were and how people use applications every day. Everybody's been comfortable with buying stuff on Amazon and uh, online banking and such. You would think that having solutions online would be an easy one, but the IT departments have been very, especially in engineering and construction, have been very hesitant, I think, to give up some degree of that control. They see their IP go out the door every day with these files, and they don't like the fact that they don't have full control. So it's been a little harder sell than I would have thought, but I think we're starting to see a lot more organizations understand the benefits and uh, how it makes life easier by having us do all the heavy lifting in the cloud.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you're sort of circling around the whole idea of build or buy. I mean, yes, I mean, certainly I have my own experiences of running into IT managers who very much keep the door closed a lot of the times to external vendors because they've perhaps sold themselves internally as being able to build it themselves. But I think the gap is between the C-suite and the IT department, not necessarily realizing that they are protecting their turf, and so therefore not perhaps always being particularly um, evidentiary about the cost of carrying and building an app. And it's so much easier said than done, because if that weren't true, then why would Microsoft and all these other bigger companies completely and utterly keep revising what they created however many decades ago now at this point, you know?
Well, we were just talking about it a little earlier about roughly half of our new clients are coming off of SharePoint platforms. And it's just that it's this recognition that why are we having to build our own solutions here? SharePoint's a great platform, but you're building your own. And why are we doing that when we have applications out there um, that we can move to relatively quickly, have full functionality, and give us some extra benefit of being available on the cloud. So we're seeing that now starting to kick in, and even large engineering companies like Autodesk are now pushing everybody to the cloud. So I think everybody's starting to get the idea.
And so let's unpack a little bit about what is the difference between a more generic system like SharePoint and what we were talking about before we got on our call, which I found so intriguing, is that, you know, oftentimes document control systems are at the bottom of the list. Why are they at the bottom of the list when any company, myself included, who runs a small consulting company to evaluate software, in a week's time, you're the whole system can be uprighted because you were in the middle of something and you called a document or a folder something or whatever, and you put it here and you stored it there, and you were sure that that was a good decision at the time. But it, over time, it accumulates in a very unusable way.
Yeah.
So I'd like to unpack a little bit about, being the document control system expert that you are. How does that differentiate itself from how all of us know that's the truth? I mean, most people, you could go and look in their folders, and any system that didn't have a proper process to follow, and it would be a bloody mess. I mean, we've all seen it. We've just all seen it. So, can you unpack a little bit about what those specific differences are and what some of those workflows are, how they're different, and how a document control system behaves differently than your average, I'll say your average, name it generic. I don't want to pick on one particular vendor, but we know who the prolific people, vendors are. But anyway, if you can talk about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll answer your first question first. And this is clearly my opinion in terms of why these document management solutions, these workflow management solutions, are some of the last systems to be implemented and operationalized. One, the systems are just not sexy systems, right? I mean, these are
Sure.
clean, cut and dried. Where do you put your files? How do you put your files? How do I send them out? And that kind of stuff. We're not doing ERP or control systems or even financial pro forma type of systems. So I appreciate that, and that's okay with me. I'm not a sexy guy. So we'll go. Secondly, I think is the solution. You think about an organization. Some the statistic we use is something around 85% of all the processes within an organization are document centric. You think about any process you do, there's a file associated. Sometimes it's a paper file, but there's a file associated to it. So controlling those documents, those files, cuts across an entire organization. And so often, what we're selling to is, even though we sell to engineering and construction firms, we're often selling it to multiple departments and multiple groups within those organizations. And trying to get full buy-in across many departments is often very difficult. If I'm selling you a benefits IS, the HRIS system, I'm selling to one group. I'm selling to the HR department. And we don't do that. We have to get some sort of collective consensus across multiple departments. And if it's an engineering department, it's even across disciplines between electrical and HVAC. And if it's on construction, it's between the quality guys and the operations guys. So we have to typically go across, and that makes it a little harder. And then, at the end of the day, the reality is our solution is a relatively smaller spend. It's not zero, but it's a smaller spend. So we don't get the bright lights that some of these other larger systems have. So the benefits we try to communicate are commensurate with that in terms of trying to solve the solutions that many people have with trying to find information and collaborate with it and secure it. But those tend not to be, wow, that's great. That's not a sexy solution.
So, in your success stories, Scott, around this, I mean, you've been around for quite a while. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it any of the big players that you work with, but you really have. I mean, I know that I'm from Canada, you're from Georgia, I'm from Toronto. I mean, I don't like to say Canada because it's an awfully big country. So, I'm just as regional and specific as anybody else. But I mean, I know you do, some significant business in Toronto and in Canada and out west. And so I'm curious to know, how does that value prop make it, like, do people come to you because it's like, God, we don't know, we're too big, there's too many different branches and too many different regions and so on? Is it that kind of a burning fire that makes them come to you, as opposed to, you trying to make the logical case for, hello everybody, you start with your documents. Everybody does every morning. First thing they're doing is opening emails. What are you doing with the email? Are you deleting it? What's the action? What are you doing with that email? Are you saving it? Are you referring to it? Are you responding to it? What are you doing with it? So if you could speak to a little bit about how the chase becomes, is it what happens that makes some of these large companies come after you that you've done business with?
Yeah, so there are three generalization, but there are three categories of companies that we see. Uh, the smaller companies, $100 million and less, and they're typically coming off of a Windows directory structure, and they just know that things are getting out of hand. They had at one point 5,000 files, now they got 500,000 files. Maybe they started from one location, now they got 5 locations, and they know they need to start to manage these files, these digital files, and get into a more disciplined system. Then we have sort of medium-sized companies, let's just say 100 million to $1 billion companies. And usually they're coming off an existing system like a SharePoint, where they just don't feel like they're getting the flexibility that they want. The solutions are very hard to implement. They're hard to maintain. They want to go to the cloud. And so they're looking for alternative SaaS type of solutions that speak to a contemporary type of software development and give them flexibility that they want, because they know that the existing systems are just not meeting what they want. And
So
then
let's
we have,
go back to flexibility, though. I really want to sort of get into, like, how could a company or organization benefit differently? Like, give me a workflow, a task, something that would, you know, SharePoint, is somewhat of a generic dumping site, maybe. How do people check in and check out documents, for example, in your system, image site, and that is differing from how a document would be handled and managed in, for example, SharePoint?
well, I don't want to start getting down in the weeds of features and functions here, but uh, a couple of things here is we're allowing people to manage disparate file types regardless of what kind of file they are. And within engineering, as you all well know, a good portion of these files are CAD files. So whether or not they're AutoCAD or MicroStation or Inventor or SolidWorks, um, or we could Creo, we could keep going on. These are files that make a big portion of what our clients deal with. And some other systems out there don't do a great job dealing with these files, because they were originally designed to handle, Word files. And so we handle those files differently. Um, as everybody knows, when you're handling CAD files, for instance, you need to make sure that those reference relationships and those attachments um, are adequately being managed. Each one of them certainly have to be versioned at the right version level so that you have a complete file construct, especially when you're looking to mark them up or edit them. And we make their lives really easy on that type of in that type of feature.
So, I mean, I think that's a very worthy takeaway. I mean, file type matters, and I think you hit, maybe too much of a obvious nail on the head. But I mean, when you talk about, well, the particular type platform we're comparing against, we're talking about generic documents like Word documents.
Mhm.
So I think that's where some of this lack of respect, if you will, for document control has come from is this generic idea that they're all the same, and they're not. Because it does depend on the type of documents that you work with and how that information is not only stored but applied and used. And so I think that's a very valuable thing. So I'm curious, what kind of computer literacy do you generally need to have to take on an engineering type of um, platform? I mean, given that there can be, I mean, I know in some cases there can be up to 18 people, deciding whether or not the system is going to a system is going to work for their company. What
Right.
what kind of computer literacy um, does somebody that's actually going to use this kind of complex system
Right.
need to have?
Yeah. So, as an engineer by trade, I like to believe that other people think similar to me in a very linear and rational way. We know that's not necessarily true. I have interesting discussions ultimately with my development crowd in terms of what needs to be done to support the customer and make their interface with the product as straightforward and engineering like as possible. Not everybody understands it, but uh, we've got to come from the base that the person using the solution um, doesn't have a lot of literacy when it comes to computers, and certainly doesn't necessarily even have literacy when it comes to technical documents out there. And so this is part of the task that we have, is to try to provide a solution that not only speaks to the person who's managing the files, but also the people who are using the files, like the engineers, like the field technicians, who are they don't care about what version it is or what type of file it is. They just want it on their tablet so they can see it, and they want to have confidence they're using the right drawing or the right file. And so we've got to meet all those different requirements in how we present our information to them. Sometimes we don't do as good a job as I'd like, but we need to recognize that we've got different needs and different levels of comprehension in terms of what they can do. So
What
I would
role
like.
would you talk about? Would you talk about, like, I don't know. Let's take a utilities company as a for example. What would that team of decision makers look like, from everybody from the more technical to the not very?
Right. So typically, there would be someone's running the process. It's typically either IT or the engineering group, the R&D group, uh, but both groups will be involved in that process. So we've got the the design guys, the engineers there. Certainly, at that point, we always have some sort of document control function. These are the people who ultimately are going to play with the system, use the system for managing files. Then we also have, to some extent, the QA people. Some depending on the size and the nature of the function, a compliance function will be in there, and then all the operations people. So anywhere from a plant manager to a field technician, um, to business analysts. So many different types of disciplines that ultimately are involved to differing degrees when we have to, make the sale. Because again, everything that everybody does ultimately comes to, I got to find my file and I got to be able to do something with it, and I have to be able to distribute it. And boy, it would be nice if people knew what to do with it when I sent it to them, that type of thing. So.
Hmm. Hmm. And so, what typical kind of time savings or paper processes are being eliminated by using a document control system?
Yeah, so this is the digital transformation, right? So we're moving off of the paper. I'd like to tell you that every job site is totally digital, but I know better than that. We're still using some wide format printout, and we're still using some, we're still redlining stuff. But those processes will be totally digitized over some period of time. We've moved to a more disciplined way of tracking the tasks associated to the completion of our job, either from the design side through the construction side. And these steps, many of them were either kind of just known or just, in a manual some places to, this is, we do this, this, and this. But now we're able to automate those, track them, report on them, send up red flags when we need to set up red flags, and it makes it for a tighter, more efficient operations in terms of both on the design side and both on the construction side at this point.
Of all your clients, which sector do you feel is more document content heavy and gets the more benefit out of being able to, you know, more fully digitize their documents?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, given that we're so strong in the AEC world, I really think the engineering design guys have kind of, over the years, really embraced the fact that they can actually, do what they have to do within a very disciplined workflow setting. So anything from how do I react to ECO or ECR in terms of making changes, to how do I respond to just general questions from the client or even the owner of the project, and how do I make a better judgment about who I assign to particular parts of the project, and integrate my resource management into that whole process. It really has helped, I think, the engineering design functions these days in terms of being able to not only be more efficient, but a higher degree of confidence in terms of what they're producing and making sure that the changes are being made, and ultimately the people who are using the outcome of what they're making are feeling more confident. I don't have any statistics, but I think people would agree the amount of rework that happens now is, I don't know, a tenth of what it used to be 10 years ago.
And so, to the security side of things, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you feel a good document control system has to have to make sure that those processes stay secure and only between those people using the system that have access or should have access to those particular documents, particularly when things are being revised and changed very often throughout a project?
Well, this is why I think we're not sexy, is because when someone asks me what the
You realize that should be your tagline now.
yeah, no, yeah, we're not sexy, but the top 3 features of any engineering document control system is security and security and security. So that's just where we are and where we live. And there's probably 2% of the people in an organization who are as worried about it as we are, but that's just the world we live in. And so what we do is we are very, very close with an organization called NIST, which is the government's information standards and technology. They set all the standards for all the government systems, including any systems that they purchase, and they set the security standards for the government. So we are very close with them, and we make sure that we comply with all their standards. They've got a standard there, this standard SP 800-53 for the IT guys out there.
Spoken with the engineer that you are.
Yeah, and that identifies down to at very granular level what security should be, both in terms of the system, um, the infrastructure, and the trustworthiness of these systems out there. And so we clearly work hard to meet all their requirements, to make sure that we are in full compliance on the security side. And it's a ongoing process because the bad guys are getting smarter every day. There's a lot more people who are going to the cloud, and that gives you um, more opportunity for people to go after you. And then there's just a lot more information. There's a lot more intellectual property, and people putting what we call unstructured data on the cloud now, things like emails, and that is making things even harder for people to have to manage and find and deliver against. So, but it's those three things that you have to worry about. It's access control, privacy, and what we call trustworthiness.
Well, how would you define trustworthiness? First two I kind of understand, but
Right.
how do you feel for trustworthiness?
So I'll give you the kind of the NIST explanation on this. So you've got to trust that your system is reliable, it's dependable, that it performs as expected, um, that it's safe, um, that it's survivable if something should happen. And then you should also have the assurance that the systems that you buy perform the functionality that you believe they are supposed to be performing. So,
So that's your own gut confidence, is what you're saying.
yeah, well, that's how NIST at least defines trustworthiness, and it's not a bad definition. From a practical perspective, this means how we control files, both digital and physical files, in such a way that we're effectively minimizing the risks of adverse events, both from a cost perspective and let's just say a competitive and legal perspective. So we're trying to manage security from those practical perspectives. We don't want something to happen that will cost an organization, and we certainly don't want to happen something that will happen that will create a legal event, which um, used to happen all the time when people walked out the doors with rolled up drawings underneath their armpits. So.
Right, right. Well, I think that's a fairly good segue because one thing I wanted to cover tonight was, can you explain the differences in architecture systems? So, somebody gets to the point where they actually want to purchase a system, and then it gets to the point where, well, how are we going to implement this? And I know that your own system, I believe, has three or four variations on that. So, can you talk a little bit about what it means to be fully on premises versus private cloud or software as a service? Can you
Yeah.
do that a little bit?
Yes. So it muddies up the water a little bit. What our system was built way back when with HTML5. So it's basically web browser software. What that does is it gives us the advantage of the fact that uh, we can implement either on-premise behind a corporate firewall if you want. We have a private cloud solution on AWS, and then we provide a SaaS solution on AWS, and it's all the same application because it's all HTML5. A differentiator to many of the solutions out there, you've heard about either SaaSifying or webifying solutions. People have taken client-server solutions and put web front ends on them and try to sell them as web solutions. They're not. And if you ever navigate through some of those systems, you'll find out it's not as easy as you would like. So we started from being a web-based solution day one, have always been that way. I personally never wanted to ever put an obstacle in front of anybody who saw value in a solution like us and dictate to them how they had to implement it. Whether or not it's on a server behind in their corporate data center or on a server in AWS that they can still control or on a server that we control, it shouldn't be an obstacle. They should have that option. As a SaaS solution, as everybody has come to understand, you do get the benefits of being able to distribute that infrastructure cost over many, many, many different customers. And so we can provide that solution at a discounted rate to our customers because we're spreading that cost over so many different customers.
And do all of these versions allow them all to have full access to their data? Because I do know that some depends if if they're on somebody's server farm like AWS, for instance, they keep it kind of hush hush as to you know who's how you can even access your own data, even though it's your data, but it's sitting in their on their cloud and on their in their server farm.
Yeah. Now, contractually, we specify that data is the customer's data. We don't have any ownership to it. We have no control over it. They are giving us permission to implement the system to help manage that data. If at any point the customer feels like they want to take that data back off that system, we will actually help them do that. We have customers who have IT groups who are managing both the server infrastructure and the database. And we have other customers who prefer to have us do that for them. So,
And what makes some of those choices? I mean, I know again you've got a diverse client base, and I mean some of them to me would have really high level security from the get go. I mean, they all do in some degree, but I'm saying some of your clients are just completely. They'd have to be locked down security from the maintenance guy coming onto the site.
mhm,
That kind of level of top level security.
yeah.
So of those versions, what do you recommend? Or I mean, I know you said they should be options for all of them, but certainly there must be. I would think fully on prem is going to keep somebody, well, at least responsible for whatever happens to their data and could never point a finger anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, there's different reasons why this happened. Uh, a reasonable example is we've got a utility um, who very much wanted to look at going to a cloud solution, but they've got nuclear drawings and nuclear facilities. And so they felt that NERC kind of required that they had full control over the system. That's fine. That's great. We can do that. We have some of these newer renewables companies that are starting out where they don't have a very big IT department and they're worried about security because they're dealing with engineering issues. And so, I try to explain certainly from a security perspective, would you rather have Amazon Web Services providing your security and, the largest company in the world doing that? I think they know how to do it pretty well. Or do you want to rely on your IT department, which, is only 2 years old. So typically it's easy for them to say, we'd rather go there, and it gives us the benefit of not having to worry about managing the infrastructure. And I think we make a pretty good argument as to that we know how to manage data, and we know how to manage files, and how to secure them. And as I said before, number one feature of the system, security, security, security. We emphasize that as well, and we make them feel comfortable with that.
Those are good answers. Good answers. Not to sound like Steve Harvey, but good answers. Anyway, I'm just curious, where do you see document control in the next 5 years? Are there leaps and bounds happening with your own evolution of your system? Are there particular things? I mean, security, no doubt. I mean, we all know the kind of volatile world we're all living in. But that aside, from a innovation side, and I don't want to. Well, I guess we can call it artificial intelligence now. It seems like machine learning is sort of slid off the lexicon, and everybody's in on AI. But to that point, are there now algorithms within a document control system that perhaps predict how you might manage your documents?
Yeah, certainly. We could talk about that. AI has application to what we do, just like everything else. I think AI will allow us to be more conversational with our clients. So, rather than have them do searches where they're looking for specific terms, we'll be able to do natural language processing and interface with them and interpret what the question really means, or what the best way is to find what they're looking for. So we'll definitely get to that. The other big issue in the industry is, hopefully people appreciate and people know about, is concurrent engineering. Certainly, this is something that everybody feels like they really need to have these days. We've got the speed of projects and the need to hand information back and forth from different organizations to different disciplines is got to a level now that really we need to be able to figure out how to do real-time concurrent engineering. Systems like Revit out there are starting to help in that sense. But from a document management, document control perspective, you can think about the dilemma that presents to us about allowing different users to be working on the same file at the same time and allow reconciliation in a real-time perspective, especially when they're working on systems that are external to our system. So,
well, I mean, you're on your typical site. I mean, you are constantly resolving problems in the minute, in the minute. So just imagine that you're able to collaborate in the minute in those documents, and you're securing that information, and you've captured that information. And to your point, I mean, the key word here is real time.
Yeah. Now that's another area that I think we really do very well, because we're HTML5, is everything that you touch when you touch that screen is real time. And so we provide a collaboration platform that is real time. People can not only mark up within our system, redline it within our system real time, but they can actually take pictures, put audio, put video next to those drawings and next to those files. We're finding that in many facilities, people are actually using our system to go and attach video files to identify maintenance issues or identify tasks that need to occur, as opposed to writing them up these days. We're going in the direction of being able to, again, do some natural language processing so that people can take those videos or take that audio and automatically create those engineering change orders without having to sit down and write them all out and then submit them and hopefully, get them to the right person. So that's one of the areas we think there's a really good things that where we can improve the whole situation in terms of being, kind of a real-time collaboration platform for engineers. There are certainly, platforms like Slack out there where it's just everybody talking to each other at the same time. But engineers need the ability to reference manuals, reference O&Ms, reference drawings, and many of these.
Accuracy. It's about accuracy of information. To me, a Slack tool or a platform, I mean, people broad brush these ideas about collaboration, but I mean, to me, Slack can just be as much of a dumping ground as anything else. I mean, conversations can get lost, and there's workflows that some people know about that others don't. So therefore, some conversations are saved better or referred to or found or referenced. To me, it's somewhat like a document control system in the sense that it depends how you're using it and how your users know how to use it. Otherwise, sure, it's great for conversation in a minute. Talk instead of getting up out of your seat and talking to your buddy, 4 chairs away or the office around the corner. You send a Slack message, but at the end of the day, it could be valuable communication that gets lost in any kind of platform.
Yeah. Well, the ramifications on the job site or in the plant or around a piece of equipment require a higher degree of capture of data, a higher degree of definition, and a higher degree of being able to translate or communicate what the issue is. And this is where an engineering-based type of system is going to help over a generalized type of real-time collaboration.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Scott, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think that you have, left a lot of value behind in this conversation tonight. And I really appreciate all your in-depth answers. And I think, I think we're starting to unwrap, what on the face of it, I'm going to be blunt, seems like a very boring and dry subject, but it actually is
not sexy.
It's not that sorry, not sexy. You're going to trademark that after this call, and you're going to use it as your tagline. I like it because I think it's a terrific marketing piece. But anyway, that aside, I think there's a lot to be said for all of this because I guess it's the normal things we all do that we take for granted too often, right? It's just we all go on automatic pilot with some of the most important things we do in our lives, and when they're not working is only when we pay attention.
Exactly.
So is there anything you want to add to the conversation before we call it a wrap tonight?
No, I just want to wish all or everybody out there who has got an engineering oriented company, and it doesn't have to be on the AEC world. We've got facilities managers out there. We've got people in manufacturing. We've got people in government who are, who are looking for the flexibility of working with a smaller company that understands engineering and understands what level of rigor and the level of security that's required in their systems, and can provide a solution that is helpful from day one. And the one thing we haven't talked about is how quickly we can implement all this stuff because it's already there and it's ready, and work with companies like us. There's always a need for big companies for big systems, but for smaller systems like this, we're perfect.
Well, but you're working with some big entities, so I don't want the leave behind to be that it's a small, I mean, you're small and you're nimble as a company, but you actually have some pretty significant players on your roster. So
Well, you know what happens there is the guy or the gal who was working at that small or medium-sized company that moved to one of those bigger companies and said, "Why are you doing it this way? I used a system that was twice as good in a company half the size. You guys need to go look at this." And that's how we get into those companies.
well, good on you is all I can say, because I mean, again, I always say, people in tech have to have the context, and you are a shining example of having the context, where you just didn't one day dream up that you wanted to be in tech, and you came from wherever you came from, and you relayed some basic ideas to some developers and said, build this for me. And those are the kinds of people and guests that I, will continue to have on Intelligent Construction Opportunities Tech for the Tech, because that to me is where the conversations happen, and that's where the applications are not only implemented but actually applied and used, and why you have, in this example, some really great long-term customers. And with that, I thank you again, Scott. Really appreciate your time tonight, and certainly the valuable information you've left behind. If anybody wants to connect with me in terms of helping any of their evaluation software needs, that's what Intelligent Construction Opportunities is all about. I want to give a nice shout out to Bring Back the Trades. I also help Steve Turner. He's the founder of Bring Back the Trades, and we're also working very hard to figure out how to strategically capture the next generation of tradespeople and bring them to be able to use these tools now and in the future. So with that, I'm going to close it out and thank everybody who is out there in listening land, and thank you for your time tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. Thank you, Scott. Bye-bye.